Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Grade 12 Parent Information Evening. First of all, thank you for taking the time to be here, and I have no doubt you'll find this to be a really helpful and informative series of presentations. You'll hear from a number of individuals whose role here at the school has a direct connection to your son and the weeks and months ahead of him. You know, my comments are very brief. Really, 2 points come to mind, or 2 thoughts come to mind. The first is, from my perspective, your sons, the grade 12s, have made a really positive start to the school year. It's strange, but I always approach September with a wee bit of trepidation. And one of the things in the back of my mind is, you know, will last year's grade 11s step up and play the leadership role that last year's grade 12s did? And somehow miraculously do every year. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's this extraordinary development and maturation that seems to take place over the summer holiday break. And I certainly have seen that with your sons. And they set a really positive tone, not just for the grad class, but for the senior school as a whole. I guess the other comment I would make, and I've been through this twice, actually it's my third time currently, I have a grade 12 daughter, but the grade 12 year is one of those watershed years that inevitably brings a strange mixture of emotions and thoughts and feelings to the forefront. And there is sometimes a fair bit of anxiety associated with that. And I guess having been through it twice, experienced it a third time, my advice to any parent and to myself would be to kind of take a chill pill and not worry so much about it, and really try to enjoy the grade 12 experience along with your son, and to really enjoy and savor and ultimately celebrate that transition. I know for the boys, I had my first grade 12 lunch today. I had lunch with all of the grade 12s over the course of the first couple of terms, and they already are getting anxious about things like university admissions. And the comment I made to them, and I repeat to you, is it will all work out in the end. And Ms. Wester will speak more about that, but I think there's too much anxiety, quite frankly, around university admissions. And I think part of the problem is that as a community we sometimes obsess about brand. The boys sometimes do. And you know my bottom line, there's no best university, right? It's all about fit. And the best fit for your son will be very different from the best fit for the parent son who's next to you, and so on and so forth. So I think if you approach it more from that perspective, what is best for your son? What is the best fit? Forgetting about brand and status and prestige and parking lot chatter. But focus really on your son and the best fit. Working closely with the university counselors, it will help to offset a certain amount of that anxiety. But from my perspective, this is a wonderful, wonderful group of young men. I look forward to getting to know them better over the course of the year and working with them. And I know in a variety of ways they will be extraordinarily successful. So thanks for your presence this evening. And now I will introduce the guy who really counts, your head of grade, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. For the last 3 years I've been head of grade. There's always been a running joke at this point in this evening about how the next speaker would look so much like the previous speaker. I'm very happy. We've actually got a principal who looks nothing like Dr. Matthews, and I'm going to ask him to come forward and say a few words, please. Mr. Kern.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Palmer. I had kind of put myself onto this agenda, asked Mr. Palmer if I could just have 1 quick minute to introduce myself to all of you. I know your sons, as they're going into their grade 12 year, only get 1 year. I only get 1 year working with them. I wanted to put a face to the name and also offer that I've had a chance to work with many of your sons over the past month and want to extend an open offer that as this is their last year, if you need anything from me, if you need anything around helping them through this next 9 months, you can give me a call at any time. You can give Mr. Lee, Mr. Collins a call, and we'll try to make this the best year possible for your sons. So thank you and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you, Gary. And I think a few words now from Mr. Lee, who also looks nothing like Dr. Matthews.
That wasn't funny. There is a striking resemblance, but I'm not going to go into that. Good evening and welcome, everyone. I'm glad I got a little bit of laughter because I was a bit worried. I say this every year, but I really mean it this year. You guys, your kids are leaving the home this year, I would think. And for some of you, that's your last one. Hands up if this is your last one and you kind of have life again after this. So why is it not like a party in here? You guys should be excited. I'll tell you what, my youngest, he graduates in 2029. I should be mad up here right now because that's a long time away. So you all have lots to be happy about, and congratulations for making it this far. But of course, they're not there yet, but they will get there. My message, I just have two messages actually. One dovetails with one of Dr. Matthews' comments. But the first one is I'd like to encourage you all to take some time and relish the moment a little bit, because I think for the past few years, you've all been, as we as well as supporters, have been focused on preparing your boys for the next level. Everything's about trying to reach benchmarks so they can get to their objectives and their goals, I should say. And it's always forward-looking. And in this year, the final year, their last year, probably in the home with most of you, is an opportunity really to sort of pause a little bit and be present in that moment. And that really speaks to a term that I once heard, and I keep it dear to my heart, is save your energy for your kids. And in this particular year, give them your best energy, not when you get home and you're tired, and try to set time aside so it's quality time. And I've got to listen to that advice. If my wife was here, she'd be nodding like crazy, but I totally get how busy it is at times. But in this final year, please try to make some time for that. And the other one is, and you'll hear a little bit more about this from the university counselors, is just the whole idea about blooming where they are. Wherever they land, trust that they have the skill sets and the character to weather the challenges, and that they will make the most out of any environment that they're going to call home for the next 4 years. And that's a big trust thing, and it's going to happen. We see it year after year, and the reason we're giving you this message is because we want to sort of quell some of the anxieties. If you feel your son is not there yet and he's going to get lost behind everybody in his final year because he just doesn't seem like he's tracking things, he's not organized, he's just fooling you. I'm telling you, he's totally fooling you, because by osmosis, he will pick it up. You can't help it but be in the school environment and get caught up into the whole preparation. So he's got that, and we've got it. So let us kind of do that worrying for you and trust that it's going to happen, okay? So that's all I've got to say for the evening, and thank you for your time. And, of course, my door is always open. Hopefully I don't see you too often in my office this year, but if you do, hopefully it's for good reason. So take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. And just echo his words. Yeah, enjoy yourselves tonight. Have some fun. There's a little bit of social time at the end, so make sure you enjoy that. With one qualification, Richard, just wave, please. Richard's a former national team hooker, and he's quite depressed at Canada's loss today. So do be sympathetic. Maybe buy him an orange juice at the end of the evening. Next up, Mr. Collins, who's going to explain to all of us what goes on in the classroom in the grade 12 year. Associate Principal, Mr. Bill Collins.
So what I'd like to do is just keep you up to date on a few of the academic things that are happening as we're starting the year. And year started really well. Students are now pretty much into their classes. A few kids might have changed classes this week, but I think we're pretty much done. And as always at St. George's, it seems to go from 0 to 100K overnight, and summer seems like it's a long time ago. So, midterm marks are due on Monday, October 19th. What I tried to do this year, because we started late because of the late Labor Day, is I tried to push the timelines for the grade 12s as late as possible so that we'd have time to gather some fairly accurate data for them. And we'll send those marks to you the following day on October 20th. And then we'll start online booking for parent-teacher conferences, probably at about 7 p.m. or at 7 p.m. on October 20th. And same thing as you did last year, where you log on. You'll have to recreate your account, but that takes about 2 minutes, and then just book your appointments online. And they'll take place on Thursday, October 29th. I wanted to just look ahead a little bit about what kind of exams might be happening as we head towards the end of the year. And as you start thinking about timelines and how all the pieces fit together, AP exams are the first 2 weeks in May. As always, Remember that for AP courses, students are not required to write the AP exams. They can choose to write the AP exams if they want. We find usually that there are more grade 11 students than grade 12 students who write the AP exams. Internal final exams, June 10th to 16th. That's for grade 12s. Everybody else has exams on the 17th, but we have no grade 12 exams on the 17th because the 17th is prize day, so we basically give grade 12s that day to get ready for their prize day. You know, your sons are writing, did I miss something back here? No? No. You know that in order to graduate, your sons need to write 5 provincial exams, 3 times grade 10, 1 times grade 11, and English 12 is the grade 12 provincial exam. There's no no internal exam for these courses that have provincial exams. The English 12 provincial exam is a 60-40 split, so that's actually an important exam. We want students to prepare well for that exam. In general, our internal final exams are about 25% of a student's final mark. As I said before, no internal exams for AP courses. We have a few double credit courses. I've put an example up there of Chem 12 and Chem AP, so students in Chem AP get credit for Chem 12 out of that course. We don't have an exam, a final exam for the AP part of the course, but we do have a final exam for the Chem 12 part of the course. It's the same thing for students who are doing Euro History and getting credit for History 12 out of that course, or for students who are doing Enviro Science AP and getting credit for Sustainable Resources out of that course. Maybe on that slide, what's important to realize is that the College Board AP exam has no effect on the student's internal percentage mark that he gets for the AP course. So the curriculum's the same for leading up to the AP exam and for the AP course, but the marks don't play off against each other. I was looking a little bit about finance that comes at the end. So there are provincial scholarships worth $1,000, and the criteria are up there. Your sons are the last people who have the opportunity to take advantage of this scholarship. It's being phased out after this year. This one happens automatically, and the determination happens around October 15th, so the ministry can take into account the August provincial exams. Another opportunity for scholarship money is what's called the Dogwood District Scholarships. They used to be just called the District Scholarships. Different categories are up on the screen. Students need to actively apply for these scholarships. Application is in April. We usually schedule the deadline for application a few days after an April grade 12 parent evening so that we can remind you one more time that your sons do have the opportunity to apply for those scholarships. Other things that students need to do in grade 12 in order to graduate. There's a graduation requirement called graduation transitions. Students don't get a percentage grade for this. It's actually not a course, but we deliver it as a course. So everybody in grade 12 will take a half-year course called Planning Transitions. This grade 12 course completes the outcomes of Planning 10, which your son started back in grade 10, and it also gives them structured time to meet the requirements for the graduation transitions. Part of graduation transitions is also daily physical activity. So students have to do 150 minutes of daily physical activity per week in grade 12. For most students in grade 12, this gets automatically covered off by their games requirement, but if your son isn't doing PE 12, and if he's taking a term off games, then he'll have to log his daily physical activity in order to meet this graduation requirement. Our grade 12s this year are doing this piece online through their Planning Transitions class, but just keep in mind that your son, if he's having a term off games, actually does need to complete the daily physical activity requirement. And the ministry is nice enough to give us a definition of what daily physical activity means. I missed one slide, so one slide got lost in the transition, and it's actually a fairly important slide. What we're doing this year for grade 12s, if you remember back, we've got the English 12 provincial exam. English 12 provincial exam in June takes place on about June the 24th, which we found is challenging for our grade 12 students because if you looked at the graduation weekend, that's a week after the graduation weekend, many of our grade 12s have become less focused on school by that time. It probably wasn't a problem several years ago when all of the grade 12 courses had provincial exams, so grade 12s might have had 4 or 5 to study for. We're finding it's becoming challenging with only one provincial exam that happens a week after grad, and we've had a few students over the last couple of years who have had a large drop on their English 12 provincial exam, and we usually have, well, unfortunately, we have had over the last couple of years 2 or 3 students who have succeeded in getting themselves unadmitted from their university because of their result on the provincial exam, English 12 provincial exam. So one thing that we're going to do this year is we're going to move the date of the provincial exam for grade 12 students because the ministry has another session in May. It's actually within the AP exam period, but it will work. So we're going to have all of the grade 12 students write their English 12 provincial exam. I think it's in the second week of May in this year, so that will be out of the way by the time they get to grad, and then after grad, and they don't have to worry about writing a provincial exam on June 24th. The English 12 course itself will go until classes end, but their English 12 exam will have been done ahead of time. They'll have done enough of the course and they'll have covered all the learning outcomes in order to be successful. Another good thing from the May provincial exam is if they don't do well on that May provincial exam, they can actually rewrite the exam in that June session rather than having to wait for August, which is actually too late. So that's all I've got for now, and I wish you and your sons all the best for this year. Thanks a lot.
What?
Oh, sorry. She can't stand to be introduced. The date for that actually was on an early slide, so that was May 12th is the date for that English 12 exam, but there'll be lots of information coming out about that. By the way, these slides and Mr. Hesketh's recording will be available on the school through the school website in the next day or so. For the last year, I've looked at the school through a slightly different lens because my son joined the school in grade 8 last year, and I'm now starting to see from the parents' view how much there is to appreciate at the school. One of the things that I appreciate most is the work of the University Counseling Department. It's an amazing department, and there are a number of counselors here, and I'm going to ask Ms. Wessler to introduce those in a moment. But Christine is the head counselor here, and she does an amazing job in looking after your sons and educating them in the process of university applications. So if you have questions about the process, certainly ask Ms. Wessler, but before you ask her or any of the other counselors, you may want to ask their son, because your son may have the answer, because they do a very, very good job of getting your sons ready for all they have to do. So without any further ado, the wonderful Christine Wessler.
Thank you so much. Sorry for my overzealousness. At least I didn't trip on the stairs, which is a first. Anyhow, it's very nice to see so many familiar faces this evening, and looking forward to talking with you after this evening's presentation. Oh gosh, okay, so I work on a Mac and I sent my slides to a PC. So if you see weird gaps, it's because our Mac and PC don't speak well together. Oh, it's kind of there, because I'm seeing different things. That's all fine. All right. What does the future look like? I showed this slide last year, and many of you were there at the presentation because of the anxiety around the future. And last year we made a really directed and intentional effort to work more closely with the grade 11s to provide some more advising through the advisory group system, through grade meetings, through one-on-one meetings as we moved into spring, in the hope that they would have reflected a little bit more on what they plan to do this fall. So now we actually are here, so welcome to the future, everyone. We're in it together. It promises to be a very exciting year. We hit the ground running. It really is something that the kids come into first day wanting to book appointments. It's on their mind. It is immediate. I've said this before, and some of these slides look familiar because I just want to really reiterate that there are so many of us, really everyone in this building, looking out for your boys. And I've said this before too, and I'm being recorded again, oh my gosh, that it does take a village to raise a child. And so some of the people on this slide are the people that have a lot of contact with your sons, it's the university counselors, but there's also a whole slew of people from coaches to the advisors, as you know, obviously the teachers, who are looking out for your boys and guiding them through the university search and application process, which is not just about university, so maybe post-secondary planning process or life planning process is a better word for that. We've had some staffing changes, and so I just wanted to touch on who the university counselors are. They're all here this evening, and some of them you've met before. Mrs. Matthews, who's been part of the team for a number of years already. Mr. Griffin, who I've said before is our university counseling guru. He's been doing this for about 30 years. Our newest counselor is Mr. Vern Beckett, and Vern brings a really good understanding of the university process with him. He's been head of social studies he was head of social studies for the past 6 years. He has a lot of connections with universities. He was one of our key letter writers. A lot of students went to him for letters. He's visited a lot of universities. He's very networked with a lot of the old boys. So he was a natural to move into this role. He's doing an incredible job and working with a significant number of boys. So we're super happy to have him join our team. Mrs. Morelli is not here this evening. I sent her home because she's been working crazy hours, but she does so much to make this department run, and I just want to publicly thank her for everything she does. And then, of course, all the other people on the slide who are just such wonderful colleagues, and very, very grateful to them. I wanted just to touch on the various roles. That should say university counselor role. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and I think sometimes the anxiety with parents or the worry comes, and I know this from myself last year when my son was going through the process, and actually was his university counselor, so that was a bit weird. And I was very stressed out, actually, by it. But just to touch on the roles a little bit. So what we're here to do is really to be a touchstone for your sons, to give them the most accurate information possible, to advocate for him when maybe there's times of strife or worry, to connect with universities, to make sure all the right documents go out, and just to really celebrate his uniqueness and spend time getting to know him so that we can actually vouch for him through letters, through conversations with university reps that come to St. George's, through any kind of connection that we have with the universities. So this is the university counselor role. And, oh gosh, sorry. The student role. We really encourage the students to own the process because we see that at the end of it, when a student gets in, that he has so much to be proud of. The university process itself is very much a learning process. The student learns more about himself. He identifies his strengths. He finds schools that are a good fit for him, and he does the work. And when he comes out of that, it's such a joyous time to see him actually succeed. And the reason why I say it's joyous, I say it's joyous because we see the realization of dreams, but we also see the other side of it sometimes where the dream isn't realized. But what I can say, and kind of echoing what Dr. Matthews says, it really does work out for every student. I've been doing this now for 8 years, and we have not lost a single boy. There hasn't been a single boy that hasn't had a plan or arrived at one of his top two or three choices in his university plans. So I think if that helps at all, I'm going to show you some data just in a few minutes to maybe assuage the fears a little bit. You have a key role, too, in this whole process, and I think it's really important that you are involved. I've read some research that what students express about their university search process, they say that the more well, I guess it is a balance, but the more the parent is involved, it correlates directly to how they express that the process was. I didn't say that very well. Let me try that again. Parental involvement is key to a student feeling that the process has been positive and successful. So I think it's very important to be involved. I think it's also important, though, to strike that balance, to have your son really own it as much as possible. We still have students coming in not knowing their passwords, having to call a parent to get their passwords. That is a little bit of a worry, and I know it's really hard to not really be on that application, but I would like to counsel you to let them own it as much as possible. Everything we're working towards right now is to provide more clarity and certainty for the future, and it's very difficult for students to feel uncomfortable in uncertainty. It's difficult for us as parents and as counselors. There is a certain measure of predictability, and I'm just going to go through that in just a moment. I've shown this slide before because the boys come in and they think that it is going to be a straight line, that if they do X, Y, and Z, they will reach their desired outcome. But what they've learned is that the process is much more like a maze. And so there are different things that come up that they didn't predict. There are things they need that maybe they weren't as well prepared for as they should have been. They change their plans, they change their minds, but they arrive eventually at an exit or at an end that is a happy one for them. For us, I think the underlying principle that drives what we do in university counseling is that we want your boys to be recognized by the university for who they are. In my mind, there is nothing more tragic than a boy ending up at a university where he feels they don't care about him, and it does happen. So our job is to, with you and with the whole school community, is to help your son find a place where he's valued for who he is and where he's honored for the person that he is. So right now, what should your son be doing? Hopefully his timetable is sorted out. If not, please do talk to us if you're seeing some red flags with some of the courses that he has chosen. He should be engaged in clubs, making friends, enjoying his grade 12 year, but at the same time focusing on, unfortunately, this is the reality, getting the marks that he needs to get into university. So it is about balance, but we always worry about students forsaking the present for the future. So there's a lot of celebration in grade 12. Mr. Palmer does a lot. There's just so many events to remind them of how great it is to be in high school, and that this is really a year of lasts for them. It'll be their last Remembrance Day, their last house supper, and I went through that with my son last year, and it's quite an emotional year as a parent as well. And when the grade 12 year hits, it's so shocking to feel like this is it for us as parents too. You are graduating with your sons. The boys are now working on applications, and again, as Mr. Palmer mentioned, they may not tell you everything, and we do not email after every single parent meeting because we are student meeting because we are booked solid. But please know that we would love to meet with you. Come in. We're going to try to get some more things out to you in e-news and that. But these are some of the things that we've been talking to your sons about. So the purpose really of, I guess, this presentation tonight is to just reassure you that there is so much being done that perhaps you are not aware of, that your sons don't necessarily share, but we are on track. And so these are just some of the things that we've been talking to the boys about. What's happening now is primarily one-on-one meetings with students. We have been running some workshops with more to come. We had a very successful Common App workshop, and the boys were so positive, cleared up a lot of questions. We have an upcoming Ontario University application workshop, interview workshop. There's a lot of things happening, but most of our work is done with the students one-on-one, and not just one meeting, but multiple meetings, depending on their needs. So how do the students know what to do? Because you're probably wondering too, how do we keep them on track? So the university counselor is really a key person in this process. We send a lot of information to the boys, and they are strongly advised, encouraged daily to read our announcements because there's just so much information. There's so many universities with different deadlines, different requirements that you can see these emails, in fact, on their Naviance account. Actually, on that topic, if you do not have a Naviance account and you would like to see what we're doing with your boys, you can have a Naviance account and look on their colleges list, look at some of the surveys they've been filling out, and be more a part of the process. So please just email Mrs. Morale and ask for a Naviance account if you're not there yet. Let's just keep going. The college visits, we've had, are having over 70 visits to St. George's this year, and I've talked about this in the past and the value of this. Even though the boys are in grade 12, many of them still aren't 100% sure of what they want to do, but that's normal, or maybe not 100% sure of where they want to go. So we're still encouraging them to attend these visits, to speak with the representatives, because oftentimes those representatives are the individuals reading their application, so that personal relationship goes a long way. And that's why we invite these reps. So we can pick up the phone at any time and ask a question. They know us, they know the school, they know the context, because I know parents have asked me before, you know, if my student was going to a public school here or there, you know, and those students' marks might be higher, do they really appreciate the context of St. George's? And the answer is, of course, that they do. This is one of the reasons why we bring the schools and the representatives to St. George's. They take a tour, they speak to us, they read our school profiles. So the boys are not disadvantaged in that sense by coming to St. George's. And it's wonderful for us as university counselors to have these personal relationships with the reps. Again, a lot of this information is for you. The boys know all this, so you don't need to go back and tell them this. And we've done a lot of this work already, but I'm just going over it again to reassure you of what's happening. They have timetables now that make them university ready. We always make sure that the boys are eligible for Canadian universities. So we do advertise ourselves as a university prep school. But beyond that, if a student has already identified that he's on another track, perhaps a selective American university or direct entry medical school in the UK, he will have designed a timetable that meets those requirements. And so we did that work in grade 11 through various venues, and we've been checking their transcripts as they come in now too, to make sure that the courses that they've chosen really play to their strengths and will allow them to be admissible to the universities of their choice. A lot of the applications, and in fact more and more of the applications across the board, we're seeing this trend particularly in Canada now, are asking for supplemental information. And the students are always encouraged to do this. Sometimes it's mandatory, sometimes it's optional, but we tell the students to read the optional as mandatory, because the more information the boys can give to universities, the better, because it just rounds out so much who they are. UBC, just as an example, just added a new video interview component to their UBC Sauder application. So it's the first year this year they're going to run that video, and basically a student logs in, he has a few minutes to prepare, and then he's asked 2 questions that force him to think critically under pressure. And obviously he's visible to the admissions people. So we'll see how that goes. It'll be interesting to see. Again, I've talked about this before. In the university landscape, there's just so much that we do not know. There are, however, a lot of things that we do know. We know that it's becoming more and more competitive, particularly in the US. We know that universities are looking for more information. We know that there is more of a shotgun approach to the admissions process, despite counsel of parents and university counselors, because of a fear of not getting in. And there's lots of literature around this. So what we are counseling the boys is to not have this shotgun approach, and to really make considered choices, and to think about really not a safety school and a target school and a reach school, but to think about maybe 5 schools that would be good fits for them, and to go for those schools with a possible reach. But the language of the university landscape is changing. What we don't know is who will be reading that application necessarily, because they are read in teams. So it is a worry. It's something that we can't control. But what we know as well, and it was echoed last night at the Ivy League presentation, is that universities want to admit students. They're not looking to not admit your sons. They're looking for reasons to admit your sons. And I think that kind of mindset just changes the process completely. The student's job is, of course, to show what makes him admissible and why the university should take him. So now, even in Canada, where it used to be a much more marks-driven process, I mean, we still do have universities that only look at marks. That has changed a lot, even in the past 5 years. And I think it is really a blessing, because we all know our children are so much more than the GPA that shows up on the transcript. I've talked about this before, but I'm just echoing it again, because this might be something that you can help your sons think about when he's answering those supplementary questions, and that is, what has been his impact in the school community and in the classroom as a learner? What is the intellectual vitality he shows in the classroom? Does he speak to his teachers? Does he do additional reading? Does he participate? Is he curious or collaborative? These are all things that universities want to know. But beyond that, they're also looking for what kind of an impact does the student have on the campus, in the community, because the trend has been now to look for students that are going to be out there as movers and shakers, doing things that the university can be proud of, and not just statistically doing well in academics. I've showed this slide last year too, because I know this is a question that plagues us, and I'm working even with younger students who have come in grade 9s, and they want to know the formula. They heard that student X got into school. Why? Because he had 9 APs, for example. And yesterday I was really happy the Ivy Leagues shared that, and or just echoed what we feel, what is some of our underlying messaging, is that there is no template and there is no formula. We've seen students get into Ivy League schools with 4 APs. We've seen students get in with more. We've seen such a range of applicants, and that's not just for those schools. It's for any school at all. So is there a formula? No, there isn't. That doesn't mean, though, that there isn't things that a student can do to get ready for the process. I shared this quote last year from MIT, but I think it's such a fantastic quote, because what they say and what the universities want is a student who's actually going to come to the university and grow. So students who have struggled in high school and have had challenges and some failures, those students are really interesting to universities, especially if they're on an upward trend and they want to hear those stories. One of the more common questions we're seeing now, especially on business applications, is describe a challenge that you had. How did you overcome it, and what did you learn about yourself? The Common App this year for US schools also asks a question about how failure was turned into success. So we don't expect, and the universities don't expect these young people to be perfect. And a lot of the growth happens when things are challenging. Again, college is not a costume party. So we want to see the boys, as Mr. Lee referred to, grow wherever they end up. This is such an issue for us in university counseling, this idea of students wanting to get it right and not do anything wrong. And it comes through oftentimes on the university essay, where a student will research what the university says they value, or their mission, or what different deans have said, and then try to integrate that into what they say about themselves. And just as a cautionary note, the universities can see through this right away. If they see those key words re-echoed in the student's statement, they're going to know the student's really struggling to put himself out on paper authentically. And it's a very difficult thing to do for some of the students to really reveal themselves, how they think and how they feel about things, and how they've integrated their experiences to become who they are at this moment in time. All right, let's see. I feel like sometimes I should have this word fit tattooed on me if I had a tattoo, but again, this is what we think about university counseling, finding a place that values your son, that offers the right kind of academic program and the right co-curricular program. And so as a result, we encourage the boys to have a range of schools. If I see only 2 or 3 schools on the list, we get a bit nervous. We'd rather have the students have multiple schools to choose from rather than only 1 or 2. It's just a better strategy. We tell the boys to be careful with rankings. They don't tell the whole story, and that they need to dig deeper. And one of the best resources for our students, and we hook them up with alum, is to talk to boys, especially recent graduates who are at these universities, whether it's McGill, UBC, somewhere in the States, in the UK, and really ask them, how did St. George's prepare for you, and how are you enjoying this experience? It's a way better than hearing it from us or the reps or the website. This is just some more ideas to think about. Again, some more of the things that drive our conversations in our offices. Is there an opportunity for co-op research? Universities are such dynamic places now, and a lot of this didn't exist when I was going to university. I would love to actually be on these campuses again. I think all these things here are things St. George's does really well too, in terms of critical thinking and creative thinking, and all our new, or not new, actually, we've just renamed them, project-based and discussion-based learning, Harkness. There's just so much we're doing. Our boys are so well prepared for the university process. These are the things the boys think about more. Is it the right size? What's the food like there? Can I do my sports? They sort of change the language a little bit, and we just add some extra things for them to think about. We tell them not to think narrowly, and there's been a wonderful trend over the last 2 to 3 years, and maybe that's because we have more visits to St. George's, of boys thinking outside the box and looking at different universities. We still have the big names, which I'll show you in a moment. A lot of the big research universities that our students tend to drift towards, but we also are finding some of our students going to some of the smaller universities, such as Acadia. We have 2 students there this year for the first time, which we're super excited about. I touched on this already. Broad-based admissions is what the name is, or holistic admissions, for looking at more than just the grades. And I've given some examples here of universities that ask for more information, and the student should always take advantage of that. However, also keep in mind, and this is something the boys might not always think about, but you can help them with as parents. If your son has had any particular challenges, or there's been challenges of the family, or perhaps he's doing something that takes him away from school a lot, he's a high-level athlete, universities welcome that information. And you'll find it under different names. It depends on the school, but if you can just Google, and we also remind them to look at additional information forms or special consideration forms, and to share those stories. It's not a negative if something happened in grade 11 and the student perhaps was struggling with, I'll just make this up right now, but anxiety or depression, or maybe something happened in the family, or the loss of a grandparent. The universities want to hear about that, particularly in Canada. The essays, the thing that takes up the most time right now. We spend a lot of time with students in our offices, helping them with essays, helping them find their voice, just questioning what they're writing. This is also an area where students can fall short. So competitive programs, particularly in business, they usually have a bar. It might be 86 they want % average they want to see, or 90. If a student meets that, the deciding factor really becomes the extra features, such as the essay. The essay will be the tipping point. And in this essay, the universities and colleges are looking for a student's authentic voice. And it's difficult as parents, and even in our offices, we have to be very mindful that we do not over-edit in any way, or somehow just take out the student's voice in that. And these people who read these essays are very well versed in what a 17 or 18-year-old voice sounds like, and they can right away identify. In fact, we've had wonderful conversations where they've shared some of the words that we all use as adults that the students don't use. And we're all well-intentioned, but I would just say be very, very careful with this, because as soon as there is a red flag, that application is just tossed because of the fact that admissions is so selective. Now, if they're not sure, the admissions people, they do give us a call and question some things, but this is a very pivotal part of a university application. So here's some more essay questions. The one in the previous slide was one from the Common Application for American Schools, but here are some of the other questions. And I think, again, the experiences that the boys have here at St. George's prepares them to answer these questions so easily. What it really comes down to is reflection, though. A student can be a leader, but if he's not really reflecting on how it's changed him as a person and how he's contributing to the school, who he is and how he will take that forward in his life, it doesn't mean much. So those last 2 bullets I took from UBC's website on the student profile, which every single student applying to UBC now has to do. Reference letters, I'll just quickly go through this. Canadian universities do not ask for reference letters, but they will ask for the names of references. And they do call us, and they do ask for the names of activity leaders. So if your son was involved in the business club, then we would have Mr. Lovell's name, or the student would enter Mr. Lovell's name on the application, and the universities will follow up. I had many calls last year and emails from Canadian universities, particularly Richard Ivey, just wanting verification of a student's activities. So encourage the students to be really honest and to really just put the things on the application that they were seriously involved with over time. UK schools ask for 1 reference. Occasionally, a university will welcome an additional reference, but typically it's just 1. and that can be the counselor or an academic teacher. And again, we speak to the students and counsel them based on what program selection that they've made. And for most American schools, just to touch on this again, it's 2 academic teacher references for most. Some will only take 1, some will take 3, as long as that 3rd letter doesn't repeat what the previous 2 letters already said. And also, oh my gosh, what just happened here? And also a university counselor's letter. I don't know, this PC did not like my math slides. Let me just, get back to where we were. All right. If there's anything I didn't cover, or if you have any questions at the end, we'll all be around to answer your questions. I think I'm almost done, actually. I should have prefaced my entire presentation with telling you that I had about 2 hours worth of material crammed into, 25 minutes maybe. And I'm just doing this for your sake as well, because I know there's a lot of anxiety around deadlines. In Canada, universities have different deadlines. Applying Canadian is a fairly straightforward process. All Canadian applications are done online, and some schools still accept paper applications. There are various application centers, such as in Ontario and Alberta, where a student just fills out an application once and then indicates where he wants his application sent. So that really streamlined the process. But the important piece is this: you know you've applied when you've paid. So if your son has never paid or you have never paid, you haven't applied. So it's actually really true. So the student will say, oh, I've done everything, it's all, but the final confirmation of payment is really the indication that your application is in. And what happens is, as soon as the student has applied, the universities begins a conversation. So I think as counselors and as parents, we feel we have to help keep the students on track, and there is truth to that. But the universities are amazing at emailing regularly with your sons to say, hello, student X, we're happy that you've applied. We will be sending you regular emails to tell you what the next steps are. So again, as a coordinated effort to keep the boys on track, and I don't think I can remember a single boy, other than a housing thing where he forgot to get his housing deposit in on time, where he's missed the ball because a payment wasn't made. Applying U.S. again, I think we've had enough U.S. Evenings in that, but in case you're not sure, I think the key thing is that St. George's sends a lot of documents to American schools, and most of this is done electronically, except for universities that don't accept electronic submissions. So you can see on the slide here, there's a number of things that go out with the U.S. application. So in case you were wondering, we do it through a thing called eDocs and Naviance, and we can actually track when a university has downloaded it. So if you ever had any questions yourself and you were worried that something didn't make it there, or your sons get an email saying something hasn't arrived, it's probably not true. There's a lot of things that get downloaded, but we can actually track that at least to the point of downloading to a university and then make a call. Again, a student has never not been admitted because something got lost from our end. Not that that happens, but in the virtual world, or in the olden days when we used to mail everything, things did get lost, and in the offices themselves. So don't worry if something doesn't get there and your son gets that email. They will never revoke an application because something from the school didn't arrive. And then applying UK, we're well into that right now. We have an October 15th deadline coming up, which is causing the boys serious concern. The marks are coming out shortly as well. And for those UK students applying, if you have a son applying for an October 15th deadline, the universities ask for predicted grades for the entire year. Yeah, there's a lot of words missing. I really apologize for this. Anyhow, we really value a gap year. In my mind, I think a gap year would be great for every student. And we're doing more work to promote gap years. We've had Latitude in. They're coming back to speak to all the grade 12s again. They just finished speaking to the entire grade 11 class. Super exciting to see how many students are interested in doing a gap year. If your son wants to do a gap year, he should still apply this year and then ask for a deferral. And we help him with that as well. Because what happens if he doesn't apply this year, does a gap year, and then applies the following year, it's hard to know what the landscape is, and it might be more difficult for him next year if the cut points for programs keep going up the way they have been. Just so that you know what happens after applying, there's that conversation I already alluded to, and then marks start to go out. What I love about Canadian universities is that they're just so generous. If your son doesn't meet their cut points in term 1, they just say, sorry, at this point, you have not met our requirements. We will await your next set of marks. And so then we send another set of marks after that. Just as a point of information, UBC and UVic will look at term 2 marks only. So they will look at marks in March, and that March mark is accumulation of term 1 and term 2 combined, so worth 50% each, basically, is the weighting. So the students have to work full on the entire time. Again, as I've mentioned, the timelines depends on destinations. Here's some key deadlines for you. Don't worry, we have this covered. We're talking to the students. The Canadian deadlines are pretty much rolling, but then they start to be final in the new year. And we really encourage the students to have their applications done to Canadian universities if possible before they go on winter break. Although some of the boys do choose to work on their supplemental essays over the break. So we're very proactive about sending out deadlines. We do try to put the onus on the student just because there are thousands and thousands of universities, but we send out a lot, so not to worry about that. And the university reminds you as well. Again, I'm just going to breeze through this. The most important part with housing is that your son always ticks that he wants information about housing. If he doesn't do that, there is a chance that he may not get it and have to live off campus. That's not ideal, especially if he's going to a big city like Toronto, but it has happened before. I'm just going to skip through this. So scholarships, we have a scholarship board outside my office. We send students lots and lots and lots of information about scholarships, including websites that are useful, and they look at this in Planning 12 class as well. There's a lot of money out there that can be even just cobbled together with little scholarships. If your son is a field hockey player, he can search for field hockey scholarships. If he has a certain background, there's a scholarship for everything, and there's lots of unclaimed money every year. I think I'm going to skip through this, and this will be on our website, but maybe what's really just interesting to see is that almost 2/3 of our graduates actually attend Canadian institutions, and I think there's a perception that more of our kids are going to American schools. For the graduating class of 2015, it was down a little bit. And so about 1/4 of our students that were accepted to American schools last year chose Canadian universities at the end of the day over the American schools. So 20% of them only stayed in Provençal, which was down a bit from the previous years. But in general, we see nearly 2/3 of the graduating class stay in Canada. Western Queens, you can see the big names here. University of Toronto has become more and more popular, and McGill has become, in the recent years, less popular. I guess they've had a little bit of bad press, especially if you see from 2013, where we had 26 students actually attend to, well, you can see the numbers there, 8 and 9 over the past 2 years. Again, just showing you some of the data from American schools. The UC schools are very, very popular. UK schools, especially for direct entry and law, are very popular as well. Popular faculties, I love this because the majority of our students, and this is in order, are undecided. So it's okay not to know what you want to do, but the boys do worry that they don't know what they want to be when they grow up yet. And we say that's fine. They're undeclared, they'll figure it out when they get there. They know they want to go, but they're just not sure what they want to do. Here are some of our, so just to give you some perspective, 96 out of 160 students last year applied to UBC. So you can see how many, this is the number of applications. They didn't necessarily matriculate at these schools, but you can see our top 10 for St. George's boys for the class of 2015. This is just our top 10 American. And again, I just wanted to show you the range of schools and just maybe deconstruct some of the myths that are out there. Whoops, there. Finally, just to wrap up, there's so much that you can do to help. We really, really welcome you coming to see us, emailing us. We want you to be a part of the process. And if there's anything we could do to make it more joyous and positive, to make you feel like you're more informed than you feel you are, please let us know. We really do care about that. Dr. Matthews alluded to this already, and as did Mr. Collins. So every summer we have 2 to 4 or 5 students lose their offers. It's really tragic in the sense that the plan that the student had, the plan that the family had is suddenly just pulled away from them. Luckily, we've always been able to find a second home for the student, or we've been able to work with the university to figure out something else. Oh gosh. Sorry, I swear it's an electrical current in me or something. There we are. Recently, I had dinner with a mom that I didn't know very well, but she wanted to have dinner with me, and she said to me that, she remembered this slide, and she remembered sitting where you are saying, that would never happen to my son. And it did. And she said, Christine, I just wish I'd taken it more to heart. We sorted it all out. The university worked with us, and we were able to actually save his offer. But I thought it was so kind of her to share that, and also to share what that meant to her when he almost lost his offer, what it meant to the family. So really, it's especially the Canadian universities. They are more stringent about this than any other school we've seen. The American universities will send you typically a guilt letter saying how disappointed they are in you. They're going to put you on probation. How could you have let them down like that? But the Canadian schools are so strict, especially with students attending a business program, that if you're at 1% under or 0.5% under, which happened, they will take your offer. So really just encourage your boys to keep working hard. We encourage them to, and remind them that universities want to see what they're doing when the boys think no one's looking or paying attention. It's very difficult to do at the end of the year when there's so many festivities. This year is a rite of passage. I feel very honored to work with your students, as does the entire university counseling team and all the other faculty that are here tonight. It's emotional for us. We become attached to your boys. We care so much about them. As a parent, there's so many endings and beginnings on the horizon. It's a very emotional time when it does finally end. I had a great quote there that I can't remember. Somebody said they really liked the slide of parent one time, so I put it back in again because I just couldn't believe how quickly time went. And when I was sitting in your seats and my son was in grade 11, I remember thinking, although I was probably presenting, so maybe I wasn't sitting there, but I remember thinking that there was so much time ahead of us, and it went so quickly. I just can't believe. I'm actually an empty nester right now, so it's been very difficult. And I've always liked to end with a slide, although I changed the picture. It's all about your boys. Everything we do is student-centered. And again, thank you so much. I apologize for the length of this presentation, but there's a lot of information I just wanted to share with you. So have a good evening, and we'll see you afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. There's a lot of information, so I think we'll give you sort of a Zen slide here. Harken back to summer when you were relaxed. This is a boy, actually it's my son, and our dog down at Boundary Bay Beach in Point Roberts. So just enjoy that for a moment and try to sort of decompress after all that information. I think the last time I spoke to this cohort of parents was in May of 2011, and your sons had just either got into grade 8 or were getting ready to start grade 8. This is the last group that I'll see in grade 8 and then see them again in grade 12. Next year I start afresh and have to get to know a whole new set of boys and parents. But I'm really enjoying getting to know your sons again this year and seeing how much they've changed, how much they've grown, in some cases how little they've grown and how little they've changed, but they're still the same fine young men that came into the school in grade 8. They're busier, bigger, noisier, but just as nice and just as friendly. They are very, very capable, increasingly mature, much more responsible than they were those 4.5 years ago. And one thing I need to caution you about, and Christine's already talked about this, we're speaking now and graduation is roughly 10 months away. The next time we're going to speak will be in April. Graduation will be about 10 weeks away. And then finally, when you start having some of the graduation events, graduation will be right on top of us. So we are almost a sixth of the way through the school year. It's going by very, very fast. I'm looking forward to a good year. Encourage your sons to work hard, to stay focused right the way through to June and even past June. But also make sure that they have fun, make sure they enjoy the time with their friends, make sure some of their spare periods are spent in the library studying, but some of the spare periods are also spent in the grad lounge, getting to know each other and sharing and forming memories. Let me tell you a little bit what's going on this year. So at the beginning of the school year, we had our leadership orientation, which was kind of a team building day. So we had them do team push-ups. These guys are quite good. We had a lot in this group here, and almost all of them got up. You see in the back left corner there are a few who didn't quite get all the way up. But again, they seem to work pretty well together. They did a wonderful job at the beginning of the year. Here we have Raymond and Noah welcoming back the rest of the school. So they were front and center, the prefects and lots of other grade 12s welcoming the whole school back as we opened last September. Last week we had our first staff versus grad game. So again, boys are engaged in that sort of tradition. There'll be probably 8 or 9 of these events over the course of the year. The staff won the first one, and all the staff were walking the next day, so that was a double win for us. And here they are now, this just looking across the grads as they sit, waiting patiently at assembly. And one thing I want to talk about now is your sons are the senior students in the school. They are the leaders in the school. Some are obvious leaders because they have a striped tie or a burgundy jacket. Others are quiet leaders, but there's still a wonderful array of opportunities where we need your sons. So if your sons are quiet about what they're doing at the school, encourage them to get out. There are programs, wonderful programs at the school. Big Brother program, Each One Teach One, Alley Outreach. Some of those are just tailored to your sons to go out there and try on the skills that they will need to have as leaders as they move on from St. George's. We had our first grad assembly last week, and I'm happy to say there were no bad reports back from that. So the boys, again, did really, really well in leading that. And again, we had 2 boys on stage who I don't think we would have known last year would be the first MCs of the grad assemblies. That was really, really positive. So here is what they look like now. And here is what some of them looked like a number of years ago. Now, if your son's not in here, if your son is here, I trust you'll recognize him. If he's not, then these are some of the people you can look around. Miss Yen retired last year. Miss Casey is now at the front desk at the senior school. And here are a number of the boys who are still at the school. We have, I want to draw your attention to May and June for a moment, and just for a moment, and then I'll let you go out and get some more drinks and cookies outside. We have a number of graduation events that are coming up. 2 years ago, we introduced the Mother-Son Social. Now, last year, if I just run the dates forward, that would be on May 29th. But again, those dates were set by the parent committee, so there's nothing cast in stone about these right now. The Dad Grad Breakfast was introduced 3 years ago, and that one we have had traditionally on the last day of classes. So if we do that again this year, that would be June 9th. The Big Grad Weekend. On the Friday, we have a lunch in McLean Hall for the grads, and a few of the Georgians come in, and that's their introduction to the Alumni Society of the school. We move from there out into the school fields under the big tent, and I know some of you have done this before with older sons, and we have the ceremony out there. I think it's a really, really nice ceremony, really lovely ceremony, and that's one where you want to have all your families come and celebrate your son's graduation. The following day, we have the grad banquet. Traditionally, there's a reception held beforehand. This year, the grad banquet is back at the Vancouver Trade and Convention Centre. We couldn't go there the last couple of years because there were big events on at the centre, and we were at the Bay Shore, but this year we're back at the Convention Centre. And last year, the boys had a barbecue the following day, hosted by one of the families. And then last year, they had a post-grad event that was held a week later. That was held actually the Friday, as Mr. Collins alluded to, the Friday after the English 12 provincial. Now, some dates are firm. The June 17th, the June 18th dates, those are set. But we need to decide about the other events, how we're going to do, if we're going to do the Mother-Son Social. It's a wonderful event. The Dad Grad Breakfast, also a wonderful event. What you want to do with your sons, what your sons want to do for some of the other graduation events. And so I need your help. I think I got one more slide. Oh, that's a bit early. I need your help because we do have a parent committee that helps guide the decisions that are made. The boys have input, and they help figure out what we're going to do, who's going to host, and we need your support for that. So if you could try to set aside the date, if you're interested in doing this, Set aside the date, Wednesday, October 21st. We're going to have a meeting in the upper grad lounge. I'll try to make sure the boys clean it up a little bit before you come, and we'll just talk about some of the grad events. So if you're interested in supporting, helping organize the grad events, then please come to that. If you cannot come to that evening, then please email me with your interest, and I'll make sure that the grad organization parents get that email and they can put you to work. This is what we're working for. This is the mother-son dance from last year's grad. And you'll see a few familiar faces in there. Most of them are out of focus, largely because I'm not a very good photographer. And there is some information there about that, that parent committee meeting. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for all your support you've given your sons and the school over the last 2, 3, 4, 12 years in some cases. Enjoy grade 12. It's stressful. There are some exciting parts. There'll be some things to celebrate, some things we need to console your sons, but it's a very, very exciting year, a very interesting year for your sons, and I promise you, by the time they get out of here in June, they'll be well looked after, well cared for, and I hope have a really good idea of where they want to go once the St. George's doors are left behind them. Thank you for your time. Enjoy some of the refreshments outside. Thank you very much, and good night.